true we have volatility, but it turns out that the company is much easier to manage today than it was before. Today we have $15 billion of Bitcoin, and it could be worth an extra billion or a billion less in any given hour. But 4 years ago, we had $500 million of cash, and there was no chance we were going to have more than $500 million in cash. So I'd rather have the capital and have it volatile than not have the capital.
Michael Saylor is a billionaire business executive and Bitcoin enthusiast who is the executive chairman of MicroStrategy, a Virginia-based business intelligence and mobile software company. Since 2020, he has been a dedicated advocate educating millions worldwide about the unique benefits of Bitcoin over other asset classes. Saylor's background in aeronautics science and technology allows him to succinctly explain why nothing compares to the leading crypto asset. He likens Bitcoin to a building in cyberspace that will someday encapsulate a large pore. In Saylor's words, Bitcoin is an immutable, immortal, scarce, desirable property that can be accessed with a mobile phone from anywhere in the world. We'll show you clips from his recent interview with Financial Intelligence. Please watch the video to the end to catch all of his insightful analogies and analyses. Also, to thumbs up this video. Subscribe to the channel and enable post alerts for more videos like this. Enjoy!
Cultural inclinations that people have, and it's hard to break them. You know, if you've always done it a certain way and someone says do it a different way, a lot of times you need some kind of crisis. And in this particular case, the pandemic was the crisis, and it was a cultural crisis. It really did encourage people to rethink how they work. It was also a business crisis. It caused people to rethink what kind of business is a good business or not a good business. And it was a monetary crisis. Interest rates all around the world plunged, asset values spiked and exploded. You had a set of haves and have-nots. You had a whole set of businesses, hotels, restaurants, yoga studios, and they all suffered and they were shut down for a year. And you had another set of businesses, financial businesses, and they all prospered and they had a very, very good year. And so in the second quarter of 2020, we were reevaluating our business, and it became clear to me that if we wanted to prosper, we needed to become much more asset rich. And the company was, half of the value of the company was dollars, was currency. And the other half of the company was the operations of enterprise software. The problem with the US dollar treasury balance was it was yielding 0% interest. So it was a non-performing $600 million. And the other half of the company was worth about $600 million, but it was competing head-on with Microsoft. And everybody that has to compete against Microsoft knows how difficult it is because they have every company on earth as their customer. And they have enterprise licenses. They will basically sell you all of their stuff for the next 3 years. And so trying to actually sell a superior product or a pure product to a customer that's got Microsoft as a supplier is challenging. So I think we discovered Bitcoin because we realized that we weren't going to succeed if we simply sat on $600 million in cash that generated 0% interest. And we started looking for some kind of property or something to buy with it. Something that ideally would go up in value faster than the inflation rate. It has to beat the cost of capital. So we thought about art, and we thought about buildings, and we thought about stocks, and we thought about gold. And my experience had been that the best idea, if you want to make 10x your money, is you buy something that everybody in the world needs, nobody in the world can stop, and almost nobody understands.
Perfect.
Okay, so in 2010, that was Amazon, or that was Apple, or that was Facebook or Google. These are all dominant digital networks that everybody in the world needed that nobody could stop. But if you'd ask the typical mainstream investor, is this a good investment? They would all say, oh, it's very scary. It's overvalued. Amazon doesn't make money. You know, mobile phones used to cost $50. You know, it's like Apple's going to sell an iPhone for $600. They said it's too expensive. The iPhone $600 is too expensive. Nokia will sell me one for $30. They said Apple's going to go to $30. And of course, what happened is Apple went to $1,500.
Yes.
And so the conventional wisdom was against these big tech companies. But I took the opposite view, and I had made a lot of money, and I'd written a book about it, and my view was Apple was going to be the most valuable company in the world because no company in the history of the world could ship a product to 1 billion people overnight for a nickel. But Apple can.
Yes.
And so it's the most valuable company in the world because it's the most valuable company that's ever existed in the world. There's a reason for it. And so in 2020, I needed to figure out what's the next thing. And what I began to think was, wouldn't it be great if I could take gold but make it digital gold? And wouldn't it be great if there was a Facebook for money? You know, if I showed up to Facebook and I was a normal person, I have 10 friends. But when a celebrity shows up to Facebook with 100 million followers, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what if there was a Facebook for money? And what if billion-dollar corporations showed up with $1 billion and put it on the network? And so I saw Bitcoin was Facebook for money. It's gold without the defects of gold, but it's not the digital transformation of information. It's the digital transformation of money or capital or property. And that's a very profound difference.
In recent interviews, Saylor has been trying to explain that Bitcoin is more of a digital property than a currency. According to the wealthy business executive, calling Bitcoin a currency or digital currency is an unfortunate holdover from the past. Saylor uses this comparison to counter claims that Bitcoin isn't used for payments. He says that the most important use case for this technology is protecting capital, just like you wouldn't take a piece of art apart to buy coffee or sell part of your house to pay your bills. Saylor thinks that the same argument shouldn't be used against Bitcoin. In a Mark's interview with CNBC, the billionaire business executive said that Bitcoin is a distraction because it's only worth $1 trillion as a medium of trade and $100 trillion as a store of value. Bitcoin is a form of money that competes with gold. Let's go back to Saylor's conversation.
In the market are miners who are selling to cover their interest expense, to cover their electricity bill, and for capital investment purposes. And right now they sell about 900 Bitcoin a day. That works out to be about $65 million a day. At the halving, it'll be only 450 Bitcoin a day, so 32 million a day of selling. The significance of the halving is it's kind of like if Warren Buffett said, I'm going to buy $9 billion of Bitcoin every year for the next 4 years, starting on April 20th, that's what the halving is. You can look at it as it's a natural demand for $35 million worth of Bitcoin a day, every day for the next 4 years. Or you could say Bitcoin is a market where there's $18 billion of supply available, and there's a demand that's more than that, but in a couple of days, there won't be 18 billion of supply, there'll be 9 billion in supply.
Yeah.
So if I told you I was going to cut the production of oil in half in 2 weeks, you would think the price would go up.
Yes.
And so that's the significance of the halving. There's not going to be any more than the 450 Bitcoin available from natural sellers. The natural buyers are people that want to store their life savings. They want a store of value, and they're wanting to save their capital. And when they buy, they'll buy and hold it for a decade. Maybe they'll hold it forever, but they'll hold it for a long, long time. And a lot of them are coming into the market because of the approval of these spot ETFs right now.
Yeah.
So they're the buyers, the miners are the sellers. The supply demand is the demand is going to increase. The supply is going to decrease. The price will have to adjust to find marginal sellers that want to sell at a higher price.
Okay. And it's funny that you mentioned Warren Buffett because he's a public person that positions himself against the Bitcoin. In some sense, you are betting against Buffett. Do you think it's a smart move?
I actually think that if Warren Buffett had 100 hours to consider Bitcoin, and if he wasn't in his 90s, if he was in his 60s, he probably would spend the time to learn it, and he'd be a big Bitcoin believer. because Warren Buffett is an adherent of the buy and hold strategy, the hodl. He's probably the most famous hodler of his generation. He bought Coca-Cola and he still owns the stock. He would buy companies and hold them for 30 years. He said he's very famous for this phrase, if I wouldn't hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 minutes.
Saylor thinks that over the next few years and decades, the economic activities and gains in towns around the world will start to spread into cyberspace, even though it has only been around for 14 years. Bitcoin is already the most valuable digital asset in the world and the center of all economic activity in cyberspace. As a result, it is likely that it will get a big chunk of all investments and economic activities that move into cyberspace. Saylor wants people to stop seeing Bitcoin as a currency and start seeing it more as a way to build $1 billion in cyberspace. Saylor thinks that Bitcoin's real value lies in its ability to hold wealth over hundreds of years, like a valuable piece of real estate or an expensive piece of art. Saylor thinks that showing Bitcoin as a digital property is more in line with its role as a store of value rather than a medium of exchange. The idea that Bitcoin is a currency also makes governments and institutions wary. Saylor thinks that a change in attitude will make them more likely to accept the top cryptocurrency. People who keep saying that Bitcoin should be used to buy coffee will no longer be able to do so. Do you agree with Saylor's points about Bitcoin's status as a digital property? Please leave your thoughts and comments on his conversation with Peter below, and don't forget to like the video. Like this video? Please subscribe to the channel and turn on post alerts to see more.